Let's talk about other issues, because the threat of terrorism is increasingly descending from the Sahel towards coastal countries, as more than 53% of all ECOWAS regions are experiencing insurgencies. The fear of a pervasive spillover phenomenon making Ghana's border regions vulnerable to attacks is high. That's according to a report by the West Africa Center for Counter-Extremism released a couple of days ago. The report further indicates that Ghana has a prolonged, unresolved conflict, and the current inherently high exploitative capacity of extremists implies that these vulnerabilities put Ghana in danger. The West Africa Center for Counter-Extremism in its report is thus urging the government of Ghana to intensify security measures to avert any attack. Executive Director at the West Africa Center for Counter-Extremism, Mutaru Mumuni Mukhtar, joins us via phone to highlight the latest security situation in the sub-region. I'm grateful for your time, Mr. Mukhtar. What are the critical security challenges you have observed at the country's borders in relation to insurgent activities? Hello, Mr. Mukhtar. Do we have Mr. Mukhtar on the line?
Hello.
Yes, Mr. Mukhtar, you are live on News Desk on the JoyNews channel. I'm grateful for your time. I'm asking what the critical security challenges are, those that you've observed at the country's borders in relation to insurgent activities.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and good afternoon or good morning to your listeners. So this is, if you're looking at, it's a report that assesses Ghana's vulnerability to violent extremism, looking at it from both internal and external sources. And your question relates to the internal sources of insecurity or factors that could motivate individuals to become vulnerable or could be exploited by extremist groups. And we make mention of several factors. We are looking at the unresolved chieftaincy and ethnic conflicts that are dotted across the country, especially the good number of them in the northern part of the country. We have over 353 unresolved chieftaincy and ethnic conflicts in this country. And the fact that many of them are located in the north, closer to some of the border countries that are currently experiencing attacks. These are vulnerabilities that could be exploited by extremist groups. And in this same report, we make mention of a report by the Global Terrorism Index for 2020 and 2021 that reveals that over 97% of all terrorism fatalities occurred in countries that are currently experiencing conflict. It tells you the exploitative capacity of extremists to take advantage of existing conflict. And that's why we feature this and highlight the significance or importance of ensuring that we do all we can to resolve all these conflicts, especially if you look at Boko, the proximity of Boko to the theater of violence in the region. This is a place we have to pay attention to and invest all we can to quickly resolve that. We are looking at issues of youth unemployment. The pervasive youth unemployment in the country, it's a vulnerability that could be exploited. Elsewhere, within the Lake Chad Basin area and some of the Sahelian countries, extremist groups seem to have understood the youth far better than even the state. They give you $200 or $250 with a gun or a small loan and get you on board, and you become loyal to these groups. They provide social services to local communities and places where government's presence is very, very limited. And we have similar areas or similar spots in many parts of northeastern part of the country. And so these things are issues that could be exploited by extremist groups. We are currently dealing with issues of marginalization along ethnic lines in several parts of the border community. Issues to do with smuggling syndicates along the borders and crime among young people. This collectively make us more vulnerable to extremism. In addition to the several other factors we have cited in the report, including the Western Togoland separatist, campaigners, as well as the Fix the Country campaigners who are looking, mounting a very spirited campaign to exploit grievances of the local population.
Mr. Mukhtar, and I'm happy that you spoke about how these countries surrounding Ghana are, posing threats to us and the need for government to act. But what exactly should government be doing to avert any possible terrorist attack?
So we start by looking at the situation of Ghana within the sub-region. We made it clear that the threat of violent extremism has been moving from the Sahelian states towards coastal states, and that includes Ghana. And today, as we speak, not only is Burkina Faso thinking low, we have the northern borders of Benin, Togo, northern borders of Cote d'Ivoire, as well as the eastern border with Burkina Faso that are experiencing a spillover effect. The spillover phenomenon has affected all these countries, and today we have over 53 countries of the West African states currently suffering terrorism. What we need to be looking at is to focus on the border regions of this country in terms of how we can deal with the vulnerabilities, we can ensure deterrence, we can build resilience within the local population against the threat. Of course, already government has done a lot of programs. Some of them include joint border patrol exercises. We have a national framework for countering and preventing violent extremism. What we need for that report to do, we need speed to involve the local communities and civil society. We have done quite poorly in terms of how we can galvanize the support of the civil society and local community actors to ensure that we collectively work to build resilience against the threat, sharing information and collaborating with the local security agencies to ensure that this does not happen here. And the point is so important because the way we deal with terrorism in West Africa has largely been through combat measures. We have over-securitized our approach to dealing with it. In fact, that's why you would see MINUSMA, that's why you see the AFRICOM, that's why you see the GSR and several other security programs. And they have been counterproductive. And our governments have fallen for it. They have looked at the problem as though it's exclusively a problem that should be dealt exclusively by the state. But experience has shown that we need a big role of civil society because the battle against the threat cannot be won only on the battlefield. It has to be won together with the local community in helping build resilience against it. And Ghana is still in a very good place to derive or devise preventive measures against the threat.
Mukhtar is the executive director of the West Africa Center for Counter-Extremism. I'm grateful for your time. We can now speak with international security analyst Dr. Vladimir Nji Danso to get his views on the developing story. Mr. Nji Danso, I'm grateful for your time this morning.
Thank you.
Now, the issue of terrorism is reportedly spreading at an alarming rate in the sub-region. How dangerous is this situation?
Well, terrorism everywhere is dangerous. And the spread is also real. If you take the whole of Africa, 70% of all terrorist activities in Africa is in West Africa, and that's scary enough. They're concentrated in the Sahel zone. But if you look at the spread, it's spreading downwards. And it's clear why it's spreading downwards that way. And that's why we should also be very careful about our state and ensure that terrorism has no foothold in the country. So it's scary, real.
From what you know and from intelligence that your outfit is picking, how close is this to us?
Very close. But the last time the terrorists struck, they were about some few kilometers away from the border with Burkina Faso. But 3 strikes, one was about 17 kilometers away, the other was about 6, 7, and the latest one was, I think, very close, barely about 5 kilometers. And that shows that, I mean, we should be very careful and we should build some resilience against the downward spread of terrorism.
What could be accounting for this? I mean, what is the attraction?
Well, the attraction to terrorism has several causes. Structural causes and motivational causes. Structural, when the country has porous borders, when the country has ungoverned spaces, big ungoverned spaces, where government is not felt in those places and people use the vacuum to endear themselves to the population and then they give them the motivation through religion or ideology. And these are the receptive points where you can get terrorism spreading. And especially when you have known terrorist organizations putting themselves in, like the Sahel area, Al-Qaeda in the Maghreb, ISWAP, and all those, Jinim and others. They were just close by. So when the structural elements lend themselves to their presence, then they will spread. But having said that, it doesn't mean when you have these structural elements, then obviously terrorism comes. The report of the West African counterterrorism, whatever I read, the conclusions do not seem to support the premises. Yes, we are vulnerable. We have all those structural elements around: unemployment, poverty, destitution. We have all of them around. That doesn't mean they translate automatically into terrorism. No. There must be those receptacles. That is, there must be some organizations which are prevalent and which can fit into the vacuum before terrorism can thrive. There must be that ideological or religious motivation. And in this country, we are not yet there, where there is an ideological or religious motivation to accept terrorism as a base for a systemic joke.
Dr. Nchidan, so we definitely must do something about this, especially as you say it's very close to us. What do you recommend, as a solution or as a prevention for this insurgency?
Sure, we must be doing something. Every country in the world is vulnerable to terrorism. There's not a single country in this world which will say, I'm immune from terrorism. If you look at what happened on 9/11 and what happened in Belgium and then Charlie Hebdo and others, then you know that terrorism can come from any quarter. And therefore, what we do, we have the preventive measures. First and foremost, are we making sure that we have human security? Those elements that give the structural reasons for terrorism, unemployment, those kinds of things. Are we doing anything to ensure that the youth have something to do and not just conglomerating to discuss issues of ideology and religion? That's the first thing. Two, we must, I always call mainstream terrorism. You and I know very little about terrorism. Very, very little. We are unaware of anything at all. We are not security conscious. Your outfit did a program at the Accra Mall, and you yourself, we are witness to the outcome. So that we are completely oblivious to those little things that can create insecurity. The third is, people think that terrorism has a flag, and when you see the flag, then you attack it. Terrorism, other than that, Nigeria would have been able to, defeat Boko Haram. They are only 3,500. And how many years now? Nigeria has an army of over 160,000, I believe. And yet, they have not been able to defeat them. So terrorism is diffused and cellular. You can't just track them. It's not a conventional warfare where you say you just go and pile pressure on them. So again, we must rather have the minds and the eyes of people on our side. That's why I'm calling for mainstreaming terrorism. Do we have programs that create the awareness about terrorism in this country? It's very, very important. The media, everybody, civil society organizations, and the government must be in arms against terrorism through awareness creation. Issues about terrorism must be known to people. So when they see one, they know one, and that kind of thing, and not to support it. These are some of the things we can be doing. Again, of course, the kinetic approach is very, very important. Forward presence of our security agencies. And I think government is doing very well on that. We have FOBs all around the northern area, that is forward operating battalions. Their forward presence alone is scary enough to alarm anybody who would want to enter that way. But let me finally say that I do not think we are not taking any measures. We are. But the most important thing on all this is that the terrorists would not stupidly just enter Ghana, knowing very well that they can be routed. They will never enter any country where they think the country is dangerous to enter. They need Ghana. They are recruiting from Ghana, number one. They need Ghana as a haven where they can rush in and hide and go back. So I do not think they will attack the way they are attacking Burkina Faso or Mali. They will not attack that way. That is why we should be careful to eliminate all things that will allow them to enter and settle.
I'm grateful for your time. Dr. Vladimir Nchedanso is international relations and security expert. We can now go live to Parliament and speak to James Agalga. He is Parliament's Defense and Interior Committee ranking member. I'm grateful for your time, Mr. Agalga. Are you surprised about the reported change in the trend of activities of these insurgent groups from neighboring countries?
No, Asha, I am not surprised at all. First of all, the report you are looking at is nothing new. If you look at our own national security strategy, I think most of the concerns raised in that report have in one way or the other found expression in our own national security strategy. I think you heard Dr. Vladimir also speak at length about some of the measures our own country has taken to prevent any terrorist activity from occurring on our soil. But as for me, the most frightening development that we need to watch carefully is youth unemployment, because he in his submission talked about the desire of terrorist groups to recruit from our country, and they have indeed been recruiting. You recall several Ghanaians have actually gone to fight and die in Syria. We've seen videos of some of them operating in the Mali region, Ghanaian youth. And you need to ask yourself, why have these Ghanaians traveled all the way to areas where terrorism is thriving to fight shoulder to shoulder with terrorists? And when they are done fighting over there, what are they going to do? They are simply going to come back home. And when they come back home, they might try to activate terrorist cells, which we are told are in existence in our country. There are sleeper cells in our country. You can't run away from that. So, point is, what is the level of commitment? Yes, some measures are being taken, but the level of commitment is something that we should all be talking about. As a country, are we willing to invest a lot more resources, to actually put into operation some of the strategies we have outlined ourselves in our national security strategy? We have a framework that is supposed to deal with violent extremism and counter-terrorism in our country. What is our approach towards funding the clear strategies that have been captured in those important documents? And that is where I have had a challenge. It does appear, and I know there are competing demands. We need to build roads, we need to fix schools, etc. But that fails into human security. And Dr. Vladimir Nchedanso clearly mentioned that if we invest heavily in human security, in a way, we would be preventing the occurrence of terrorism in our country. So we have the strategy, we know about the dangers, we have ruled out forward operating bases, but the point is that enough to deter terrorist activity in our country? I don't necessarily think so. Terrorism can be, homegrown. And how do we grow terrorists locally? When life becomes hopeless, somebody completes the university and simply cannot find what to do. Yesterday, I read on social media how a graduate from the University of Science and Technology has resorted to selling ice water, in our streets, just to eke out some living for himself, Asha. These are the things we need to watch critically as a country. But all said and done, I think that those who came out with that report have done well. Government needs to take the report very seriously and add some more, zest and zeal to our strategies. The implementation of the strategies that we have all been talking about, which are in our own national security strategy. I wasn't too happy. When we debated the budget statement, I made it very clear that there were no budget lines for the implementation of our own national security strategy. And that has always been a challenge for us as a country. We have brilliant ideas, but when it comes to implementation, we are found wanting, Asha.
I'm grateful for your time. James Agalga is a ranking member on the Defense and Interior Committee of Parliament. We'll take a break on JoyNews Desk. When we return, we'll bring you the very latest from the world of business.